Hi everyone, welcome to another video. Today I want to share with you how to create some sentiment backgrounds. Here's a look at the supply list for the first card. You can pause this, grab your supplies, and make this card along with me, or you can come back here for reference later on. So for this first card, I'm going to be starting off with the side folding A2 white card base, the Sending Sentiment stamp set from Craftin Desert Divas, and also I've already chosen my color palette for this card. I've got 4 dye inks. I've got a brown, a green, a plum color, and also a burnt orange. Now I am choosing the theme of this card kind of as a thinking of you or a sympathy card. I don't have many of those in my stash, so I thought while I have my supplies out and I'm making these types of cards, I'll go ahead and make one of those. Not my favorite kind of card to make, but unfortunately they are necessary. Now I went ahead and loaded up a few of the sentiments that I thought kind of fit that, and I also knew I wanted to use the sending die. So these are going to finish off that sending sentiment. So sending thoughts is my first stamp that I'm going to go ahead and stamp. I stamped that right in the center in plum, and now I'm going to build out from that. So I'm starting from the center and building my background outwards towards the edges of the card. Now my next one will be sending hugs. So I went ahead and stamped the hug sentiment, and I used burnt orange for that. And now I'm going to go ahead and stamp the word love. So sending love is going to be my final sort of word play on this one. And I stamped that in the brown dye ink. Now I'm going to go back through. I'm going to switch up my colors a little bit. Now it seems like whenever I stamp this, every time I went back to the word hugs, it kind of wanted to be stamped in that burnt orange color. So I did stamp that quite a few times in that same color. But that's just kind of how it ended up playing out on the card. You don't want to stamp the same word too many times close together. You also don't want to stamp the same word or the same color too many times together. So you can see I did stamp the word thoughts next to the other thoughts word, but I switched up the color on that one. Then I went ahead and added in that little space, hugs, and I went ahead and stamped that in the burnt orange again. You can see that that's just kind of how this card went. But again, I started from the center and I am building out. Another great way to kind of make these look a little bit different is turning them. So I stamped that first one exactly how you would read it on a piece of paper. My next one, I went ahead and turned on its side and had it facing more towards the right. Then my next one I turned on the side but had it facing towards the left-hand side. So switching these up and putting them at different points on the card is really going to help make this a nice graphic background that's going to turn out different every time. Now, if you have a hard time creating kind of placing these and figuring out where everything goes, something I did ahead of time is I made myself a little graph kind of. So I took all the stamps I knew I was going to use, and then I went ahead and just stamped them out. You don't need to switch up colors at this point. You can go back and write in different colors here and there of what you might want to use, but just take those words and kind of lay them out on a scrap piece of paper just to get an idea of how you want everything to fit together. Then when you go and you stamp them on your card, you know where you want them to go. All then you need to figure out is the color. So I'm finishing up my last few little stamps here. You can see I have gone out to each one of the 4 corners. And now I'm going to finish up with my final little hugs right up there in the top. But when I looked at that, I thought there was a lot of white space still left on the cards. So now I'm going to go back in and fill that space with little stamps. Now the special delivery stamp set from Craftin Desert Divas has these little letters in it. I thought that was the perfect addition. It's nothing over the top. Even little hearts would be great here. On my next card, you'll see I used something different, but hearts, very graphic kind of shapes would work for this. But I thought these letters fit with this theme very well. So I grabbed the 2 different sizes of letters. There's a large one and a small one. And I'm just going to fill in the white space with the different inks that I used. Excuse my hair there. I had to look over. I misstamped. And I had to look straight through to line that back up. But I went ahead and just used the colors that I used on the sentiments, inked up those little letters, and stamped them in that white space to fill it in. Now again with these letters, I'm using the same two stamps over and over again. Switching up the ink colors is going to help make them look a little bit different, but also switching their orientation helped a lot with making them look a little bit more different and kind of just helping it look not so repetitive, I guess you could say. So I'm finishing up a few more little stamps here. Wherever I thought there was too much white space, I went in and filled in. Now in some of these I used a couple of the letters, in others I used 3, and in some spots I only put 1. And that again is just going to help make this a little bit different each and every time you put together one of these cards. Now, if you wanted to make this a little bit more bold, you could come back in and color in those letters, and that would look very cute as well. Either with watercolor, or you could come back in with your alcohol markers, your colored pencils, and just fill those in very quickly. It wouldn't take long, but it would give it a nice bold look. I went ahead and just kept the outlines at this point though. There's a look at that final background, and now I'm going to go ahead and finish off the rest of this card, which was very simple. So like I said before, I wanted to use that sending die. This was brand new last month. I just love this. Not only does it come with the actual word, but it comes with the outline as well. So I first cut the word from some burnt orange cardstock that I matched to the ink color I used. Then I cut the outline from some craft cardstock. Next up, I used the inside scalloped rectangle dies. This is the medium sized rectangle. I cut that from some craft cardstock as well. Now to put the sending die together, all I'm going to do is add some glossy accents, which I'm just using as a liquid glue, so any liquid glue you have on hand would work. I'm putting some of that on the back of the actual word die cut. Then I'll just go ahead and line this up right over the outline. Then once I have that in position, I did go ahead and add an acrylic block over the top of that just to give it a little bit of pressure so everything would stay in place while I let that dry. Now for my frame, I added some fun foam and double-sided adhesive to the back of that just to give it a little bit of dimension to pop it away from that sentiment background. I'll go ahead and place that right in the center. I wanted this frame to be pretty thin and also not to cover up much of that background, so that's why I went with this one. Then for that sending word die cut, I'm going to add some more fun foam that I have double-sided adhesive on, and I'm going to pop this up right in the center. Now this fits that rectangle perfectly, so it almost looks like it's attached, but it's really two separate die cuts. But once that was done, that completely finished that card off. Here's a closer look at the finished card and the stamped sentiment background. Now overall, this card took about 15 minutes to make, so it was very quick and easy, but I love the way it turned out. Moving on to the second card, here's the supply list for this card. It has a little bit more to it, so there are a few more supplies. Again, you can come back here for reference or pause and go grab the supplies and make this card along with me. For this card, I wanted to switch up the fonts a little bit and really mix and match, so I chose 3 sentiment sets from Craftin Desert Divas. From the first one, the Simply Said, which I'm choosing now, I went ahead and chose 3. I chose Smile, Hugs, and Happy Birthday. Then on this Wishful Thoughts stamp set, it has a bunch of different fonts already in it, which is great. And for that one, I actually chose the word Hugs. Simply Said and Wishful Thoughts both have hugs. I went ahead and went with the one from Wishful Thoughts. I chose that, Birthday Wishes, and the Happiest Birthday. And then from Sending Sentiments, which I used on the card beforehand, I chose Wishes and Birthday. Now I loaded these all up onto acrylic blocks, front and back, so I could switch between them easily. Now I have a hard time choosing color combinations. If you are like me and that is a problem for you, grab out your Craftin Desert Divas sequin mixes. I knew I wanted to use this one, so I just picked that out, looked at the colors in it, and grabbed inks that matched it, and those are going to be my inks for the card. It really is that simple to kind of help get your mind going and just help out with those hard to make decisions. Now again, I'm working on an A2 side folding card base here, a white one that I made myself, and I have went ahead and unfolded that. I'm going to work on a flat surface, and I've also started from the center and I'm working my way out. Now again, for this card, I did make a little graph or a little map for myself beforehand, so I kind of knew where I wanted everything placed. But for my actual map that I made, I used different colors. So I decided last minute I wanted to switch it up. I didn't really like the color combination I came up with on my own, which is why I grabbed out my sequin mix and chose from that. But once I did that, I just switched up the colors, used that map as a guide, and then stamping this out was so simple. I just started stamping in different colors and again working from the center, working it out until I filled up all the space of the card and kind of work my way out to those 4 corners. Now if you have any white space in between, don't worry about it. I'm going to go back in and fill that in with some filler, smaller stamps later on. Now one thing that I will say is when you're working with this many stamps, one thing I found is that it's best to clean off the stamp as soon as you're done using it, especially if you're switching between colors. You can see on that left-hand side, I used birthday that I had stamped with pink. I didn't clean it off, and I forgot to clean it off before I inked it up with green. So it turned a little orange on me. It doesn't really show up in the finished card, but just a word of warning, clean them off after you're done stamping. Now for my fillers, I actually went ahead and die cut some fun foam with the little circle die that's included in the Crazy Stitch Frames die set. I didn't have a little circle stamp on hand, so I just went ahead and die cut that with some fun foam, mounted those onto acrylic blocks with some double-sided adhesive. That comes off very easily just by either picking it off and kind of rolling it up with your fingers, or you can use some alcohol to remove any of the stickiness. Then they turn into these great little stamps that look like birthday confetti. Now again, I am just using the 4 colors that I use for the sentiments, and I'm just filling in here and there wherever I think there's a little bit too much white space. Now in some of them I only used 1 dot, and others I used 3, others I used 2. It really just was whatever I felt looked best. And there is a closer look at that finished background. Now I wanted to make a shaker card, so I went ahead and die cut the inside scallops rectangle die, the largest one in that set, from white cardstock, and I also cut that Christmas border from the Holiday Borders die set, and I wanted to make this more birthday card friendly. So I just took my scissors and I chopped off those little Christmas trees and just left the presents. So now I've got a little present border instead of a Christmas border. So whenever you look at your dies and you buy your dies, especially for the holidays, make sure you look at those and think, how can I use this on my everyday cards? That's just one example from that stamp set, but finding unique ways to use them is a great way to really stretch them out. So for this card on my acetate, I'm going to go ahead and stamp that sending word dot or word, and that is from the Wishful Thoughts stamp set. I stamped that on some heat resistant acetate with Versamark ink so I could sprinkle on some black twinkle embossing powder and heat set that. I went ahead and attached everything together as I would any other shaker card, added my fun foam, and now I am filling this with this Sweet Pea sequin mix. And I just like to mix it up in a cup, especially sequin mixes with seed beads that can sometimes fall to the bottom. I find if I dump them in a cup, mix them up, and then kind of spoon them into my card, I get a nice variety in my shaker. Then I went ahead and flipped my card base over on top of that, flipped it over, and I got this great shaker card out of that very simple and easy to do background. Now on a card like this where I have so much going on in the background, I like to keep the area around it very clean and simple. So that's why I went ahead and went with the white border, the white frame, kept everything very, very bland to really allow that background to pop. Here's a closer look at that finished shaker card, and also here's a closer look at both cards together. It's the same exact technique, but they both turned out very similar, but also completely different, which I love. Here are a few pictures of the finished card. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it's a little bit longer, but I wanted to share with you different ways you could mix and match and use the same exact technique to create some very different cards. On the left side of your screen, you're going to see a few different links you can click on. Thank you guys so much for watching today, and happy crafting!